One of the most obscure D&D 3.5 classes was the Urban Druid that appeared in the Dragon Magazine Compendium Volume 1. Despite being not well known, it was a very powerful class, with some interesting flavor. I wish this class had gotten more support, and by more support I mean any support at all. I feel like there is a lot of potential in the Urban Druid, and the class also has a niche that isn't taken by any other class. The first edition of Pathfinder had the Urban Druid archetype, but it was very lackluster. So how can you make an Urban Druid in GURPS? If you remember, the nature power modifier in GURPS consists of two parts. Nature powers are hindered by technology and also hindered by the despoilment of nature. Hence, it is a -20% modifier. Pyramid 4.5 has the technopathy article that describes the technological power modifier, and its so-called civilization component actually lines up very well with what I wrote years ago. So here is my approach. Urban Druids cast spells in the same way Druids do, although they get their spells from the power of the city spirit rather than from nature. Their spells are oriented towards society and construction, including the ability to change shape into different humanoids and creatures found in urban environments. The most powerful urban druids can transform into objects or even construct. Sorcerer's Empowerment, if you even need it, by default includes the magical -10% limitation, but we will replace it with urban -20% for this advantage and for the sorcery power modifier itself. Thus, all spells will have at least a -20% limitation from the power modifier. To balance out the additional limitation in the internal construction of the Sorcerer's Empowerment advantage, we will additionally apply Reliable 2 +10%. This will give a +2 bonus to rolls made for hardcore improvisation. After these adjustments, the cost of the Sorcerer's Empowerment advantage will not change. This power modifier makes the spells depend on the collective consciousness of urban dwellers instead of magic. Technology does not impair the use of urban druidic powers. Use the following table to estimate the penalty. A spell that requires no die roll loses 10% of its effectiveness, bonus to reaction or skills, DR, etc. per -1 instead. If the penalty is total -10 or worse, you are powerless. In addition, the new power modifier requires you to take a -10 point disadvantage that will represent the mystical practices of urban druidism. Typically, this is disciplines of faith, mysticism, or vow, own no more than your horse can carry. Should you transgress, your powers will be revoked instantly, but you can get back in good standing by completing a minor quest. Some spells require somatic, verbal, and/or material components. This is accomplished by adding requires magic words, requires gestures, and/or requires material component limitations to the spells. The combinations of these limitations may vary from spell to spell. This will make urban druids easier to counter. FP cost should not always be 1 FP. This will add a bit of bookkeeping, but is useful for balancing powerful spells, such as Town Portal. The same applies to casting times. The caster's spell repertoire must be limited to urban druidic spells. This is roughly equivalent to 5 colleges: communication and empathy, food, knowledge, making and breaking, and technological spells, with the addition of body transformation spells that can polymorph him into another city dweller or a construct, and also spells that can transport you within the city or between cities. So Sorcerer's Empowerment gets no scope limitation. Advantages granted by urban druidic buff spells should have the urban -10% modifier, because they are limited by the presence of civilization, but do not require the subject to engage in mystical activities. For hardcore improvisation, urban druids use religious ritual druidic instead of thaumatology. When rolling a critic of failure on a casting roll, use the City Botches table from Pyramid 358. After all adjustments, Sorcerer's Empowerment Urban Druidic costs 20 points for level 1 and plus 10 points per additional level. And that's it. As you can see, the scope of Urban Druid powers is quite broad, and some of these powers can only very rarely be found among other spellcasting traditions, such as food or technological spells. I am content with this approach, but I haven't actually tested it yet. I haven't had anyone play an Urban Druid before, but hopefully someday I'll see one. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.